I am Brother Cornell West.
This is Chris Hedges.
I'm Rosa Clemente.
Hey, what's up? This is Chuck D, Public Enemy, Prophets of Rage.
And this is Newsbeat.
Peace and love, everyone. Check 1 2 for 2021. This is your man, Manny Faces. This is This Week in Social Justice, presented by the Newsbeat podcast. Welcome to a special edition. It says Friday is live at 1 p.m. at the top, but that's not true. It was true towards the end of last year, but for this year, we're coming back on schedule. We'll be back with you in a minute, regularly scheduled programming and all that. But we wanted to bring to you a special edition tonight, and we are super glad that you are joining us. Joining me to get into this special episode, which takes a look at Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy, the nuanced innards of his legacy, particularly at the end of his life, are my esteemed colleagues at the Newsbeat podcast, the editor-in-chief, Mr. Christopher Theoharis, and the managing editor, Mr. Rashid Mian. Gentlemen, start your electronic engines. How are you?
Good. I mean, I'm going to go out and say it. What a year 2021 has been.
Oh, man. I'm so glad that everything's calmed down this year. Like everything's gotten so much, calmer and relaxed. It's really been a blessing.
Yeah. I thought we were all going to go back to brunch life.
Yeah. Well, listen, that ties right into our question of the day. So y'all still happy it's 2021? Everyone's all like 2021, new year, new us. You still happy? Please answer in the comment section. We would love to know. I thought there was something to, the communal human
exhale.
Yeah, like the mental of every person on the planet, mostly, unless you're sort of, figure that you're losing ground in life. But that most people wanted a better year. We went through this horrible pandemic. It's been political craziness. It's just been chaotic. And I think that we all kind of said, all right, I know a day on the calendar doesn't mean much, but there's something to it. If we're all counting down the 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, Happy New Year's across the planet, that this collective energy would mean something. And then 6 days later, that theory was shot down. So We'll see. Anyway, that's the question of the day. We do appreciate your comments and tuning in and checking us out. We will be very serious this episode, but that is just one of the things that we decided to talk about right out of the gate. Shouts to Mom and Knight already on the check-in. Shouts to Sage on the check-in, and anyone. Again, the question of the day. If you would give your comments in this, your answer in the comments section, we will share your comments with the live streams. We are live. You may be listening to this or watching this on a replay. We're live. It is Wednesday, January 13th, 2021, the date of the second impeachment, which just
amazing. It took us 4 minutes to get to the biggest news of the day.
Yep. That is, however, not. Well, no, I'm saying we're leading up to it, baby. We're leading up to it. We do have a very great show for you tonight, and it's the reason why we want to do a special episode as we approach Martin Luther King Day. We have a storied tradition at Newsbeat because we are a podcast. We're not just live streamers doing YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. We're actually a podcast, an award-winning podcast that merges social justice journalism, interviews with experts, activists, people who are affected by social justice issues, and we merge that with music and original lyrical contributions from brilliant independent hip hop artists, including the one you see on the screen there. So Silent Night will be joining us. He was the MC that was featured on our inaugural episode, and of course the great, inimitable Reverend Dr. Liz Theoharis will be joining us, the co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign. Real quick, Rashid, Chris, anyone want to let the viewers know why the Poor People's Campaign ties into Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. so much, and why, as we approach Martin Luther King Jr. Day every year, we tie in this very special aspect of his legacy?
Yeah, I mean, and Manny, as you mentioned, our very first episode of Newsbeat was on MLK, and the legacy that he envisioned for himself was not sort of the soundbite that comes up every year. I have a dream.
Right.
Part of that was the Poor People's Campaign. which Reverend Theoharis is co-chair, as you mentioned, and that is a continuation of an initiative that MLK was he was really about to launch it before his assassination. And what that called for was a mass gathering at DC of all races from across the country to demand economic equality, really. I think part of it was, and we'll talk more about, an economic bill of rights, and demand that of the government. They were going to stay there and occupy the mall, the National Mall, until they got it. And thousands went. It was such an encampment that it was dubbed Resurrection City. And unfortunately, Martin Luther King could not be part of it, but that was his vision. And that's just one of the many initiatives which he did that you just don't, as we titled the piece, you won't read in history books. You won't learn about in school. And so, that episode shines a light on it, and we felt it was very important to just have this special episode to shine more of a light on it, on these other initiatives.
Yes.
And
fair enough. So we're going to talk about that episode. We're going to talk about what that means, the continuation of the Poor People's Campaign. Obviously, this is not something that died with Dr. King, but continues to this day. And with a little bit of luck, the Reverend Dr. Liz Theoharis will be joining us momentarily to talk about that. Now, in the meantime, in between time, something we're going to stay on brand. We are going to we did our question of the day. We're getting some comments in the some answers in the comments section. We'll share them with you in a bit. But let's go right into our. Oh wait, I'll tell you what. He's typing on his phone in the green room. Let's bring our friend into the mix, Mr. Silent Night. Silent Night, artist in residence. How are you, sir?
I am well. What's up, y'all? How's everybody doing?
Allow us to.
Thank you.
SK, yeah, you're going to join us for the second half of it. Well, you're going to stay with us as a kind of guest co-host and talk to Dr. Theoharis, or just kind of fly on the wall as I am often, and let these primo journalists do their job. But let's go right into our Newsbeat Bites. You could play along, SK, and you could play along at home. Newsbeat Bites, small tidbits of information, except for Chris's, that you may not know about, you may not have heard about, that have a social justice edge to them. We like to share them with the audience. You may or may not have heard of this. This is mine. I'll start. Michigan plans to charge the ex-governor Snyder in Flint water probe. The fact that there have been no major, I don't know if this is true, I'm going to just assume so because we probably would have heard about it, no major arrests, no major accountability for the Flint water crisis, which still has ramifications today. It was just the Associated Press has reported that there will be a planned prosecution. I'm not sure if it's happened yet or if it's about to or if it's really going to happen, but there will be. There are rumored to have charges being filed against Snyder, the former health department director, and others in the administration that let the Flint water crisis become the Flint water crisis. So again, not a big accountability record there, as far as I know. Hopefully a step in that direction. Anybody thoughts on that? I thought it was interesting. I thought it was, but again,
many people will say a long time coming, especially, after all the devastation and some, there's people who've died from some of the consequences. So I bet there's a lot of people in Flint right now who, are happy that potentially a measure of justice is coming. Obviously, they would have to be a trial, and this is just an announcement of potential charges, but it's obviously a step forward.
Right. Fair enough. All right. Yeah. So that's it. We will keep an eye on that, as we like to do. We like to keep an eye on some of these stories and share them with you, so you don't have to go digging around the news sites. That's my Newsbeat Bite. Chris, what do you got? This small little story from
I'm sure none of our listeners or viewers have ever heard about this, anything to do with this, but obviously a week since the pro-Trump neo-Nazis and white supremacists attacked the Capitol, and the fallout continues.
I did hear about that.
Today, the impeachment of Trump for the second time. by the House, and more arrests with this. They're still searching for a lot of these maniacs. And yeah, I mean, it's, you know.
We're going to talk about this picture a little bit later. And Rashid, you also made you noted something, two things that we talked about kind of offline a little bit, where that there is some hint of some sort of, I don't want to say inside job, but some sort of, there's some murmuring going on about people who may have been more involved than we initially thought. So
yeah, and I apologize to the viewers if I'm very laggy right now. I don't even see myself moving.
You're
but okay. But yeah, there's been suggestions from some members of Congress, especially those on the Democratic side of the aisle, who are saying they're not coming out forcefully, but they are saying that there is some sort of, they are hinting at some sort of potential involvement with Republican members of Congress. There's a suggestion that there was tours given to certain groups of people in the lead up to January 6th. And there's just some curious things that happened. Ayanna Pressley's staff has said that when they hunkered down in their office, that the panic button switches were torn out.
Right.
So, it appears that those were tampered with allegedly. So I think there's potentially going to be some Inspector General investigations that have been announced. So I think we're going to probably find some answers and maybe learn some hard truths about involvement, scary as it is, of members of Congress.
Interesting. We will obviously collectively, everyone should be keeping an eye on those reports and keeping an eye on the next 7 days in particular. It's going to be either nothing or everything. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Rashid, that leads into your news bite. Well, it doesn't lead in directly, but since you're talking, keep talking. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So I'm going to do this really quick because I think we have Reverend Dr. Theoharis.
We do.
In the waiting room. So this is an issue that if you follow This Week in Social Justice over the last several weeks that we've covered, it's the sort of I hate to say it this way, but it's sort of a federal killing spree that's going on. Another person was executed this week. This was Lisa Montgomery. She's the first woman to be executed in, I think, nearly 70 years by the federal government, and the 11th person to be executed by the feds since March, and those were the first executions carried out by the government since 2003. So there's been a concerted effort by the Trump administration to carry out these executions, mainly because they know that President-elect Joe Biden opposes the death penalty and will likely, at the very least, start a moratorium on death penalties. And I just want to note one other thing. It's also important, I think, that we, in the context of when people are talking about women in jails and prisons, that they also cite just the percentage of the high rates of women who've previously been abused domestically, potentially sexually, and also the high rates of women in jails and prisons that suffer from drug or alcohol dependence. I mean, these are things that don't get talked about a lot. And family members, I think that the sister of Lisa Montgomery has talked about the sort of psychological trauma and sexual violence that was carried out against her as a child. Obviously, the crimes that she committed were horrific, but there's something to be said about a country where basically at birth, people are harmed, and then their last seconds on this earth was through a lethal injection. Right.
We've talked about it before. We will assuredly cover it again. We have talked about women in jail. We've kind of covered that issue specifically on the Newsbeat podcast. Again, if you're just tuning in, we're not just doing live streams and bringing to you news tidbits and having great interviews with esteemed folks like we're about to, but also we do a podcast. We cover a lot of these issues in depth in a very highly compelling manner, a mixture of really high level social justice journalism and music. So just bringing that back to the forefront, I like to highlight our episodes.
And the enormous amount of people who are mentally ill, who are locked up, and how jails have become the de facto healthcare facility.
Absolutely. Another issue that I won't be able to find in time, but that we've covered. There isn't really a thing that happens out there that we haven't covered, my friends. We'll come back to that,
top, but we can find it later. Yeah.
Yep, indeed. So as we move, that is everyone, our news beat bites. Here they are. All right, very cool. So, moving along, as we promised, today we are bringing a special episode in the run-up to Dr. Martin Luther King Day. Again, our very first inaugural episode was what our executive producer and creator of Newsbeat said so eloquently, an unconventional look at conventional wisdom. And it took a deep look at Martin Luther King, his legacy, what he was known for, what he was, I think, overly known for, the whittling down of his legacy to 4 simple words, a very quick, pithy epitaph that's been used in schools and teaching and all these things, but did not fully give the nuance that that our children, our young people, our community members deserve to know about. So please, if you guys would, please introduce our guest and why we are speaking to the inimitable Dr. Liz Theoharis.
Yeah, we're really happy to have on tonight's show, this special episode, Reverend Dr. Liz Theoharis, who's the co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign. And we've spoken to Reverend Dr. Theoharis a couple times before, so we're very happy and honored to have her on again.
Please join me in welcoming our guest with a fancy screen thing that says... Reverend Dr. Theoharis, thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we really appreciate it, Reverend. And just because we're short on time, so I just want to get into it. Can you please explain to viewers sort of just the genesis of the Poor People's Campaign and sort of why it was important for you and others to carry on this mission established by the late Martin Luther King Jr. Prior to his death?
Yeah, I mean, so right before Dr. King was killed, really a year before he was killed, he said that the Achilles heel, the weak point of the intersections of systemic racism and poverty, militarism, and these 3 evils, as he described them, was to unite and organize poor people from across race, across geography. And we're living more than 50 years later. There's 140 million people who are poor and low income. One storm, one healthcare crisis, one job loss away from economic ruin. We have fewer voting rights today than we did 50 plus years ago. There's, we can keep on going. I mean, we have emboldened racists trying to plan and carry out a coup. We spent $2 trillion in dealing with climate disasters as a nation last year, and so poor people and people, moral leaders and activists came together and said, you can't honor somebody by giving them some praise and by doing some community service one day a year in his name. You have to pick up the baton where Dr. King and so many other leaders left off and carry it the next mile. And so back in 2018, the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, was launched. We launched with the most expansive and largest wave of nonviolent civil disobedience in the U.S. Capitol and in state capitals across the country. Thousands of people, tens of thousands of people engaged in nonviolent direct action across lines that divide us, across poor people of all races, of all creeds and colors and religions, ages, saying we have to shift the narrative in this country and we need to build power amongst poor people. And so for the last couple of years, we've been organizing. We've put forward a very bold and visionary agenda, an agenda that says that it actually costs our society more to have the levels of poverty and inequality than it would do to make sure everyone has healthcare and guarantee housing for everyone, have guaranteed right to a job at a living wage, and have strong social safety nets. And this is possible, and this is what we're building up the power to be able to enact.
And Reverend, now it didn't just end also in that singular march on Washington. You guys are traveling the country. You have been. And I feel that what often gets left out of the conversation of poverty, a lot of it is, statistics you hear about, but you have been out there in, visiting people in these communities. Can you just share, I guess, some of the scenes that you're seeing just to really bring home for listeners and viewers exactly what it means to be poor in America?
Yeah. So, I mean, here we're living in the richest country in human history. We throw away more food in this country than it would take to feed every person. And yet we've been in Lowndes County, Alabama, where people, poor Black and poor white people, have raw sewage in their yards. Moms have to drive, an hour distance to bring their kids to see a doctor because their 9-year-old kid has so much mold in their house that they're having to use a CPAP machine already. Or in Aberdeen, Washington, out in Washington State, where 1 in 16 people in this town are homeless. And it's mostly young white people who are living in encampments. When, again, there's actually 5 abandoned houses for every homeless person in this nation. But in Aberdeen, you have a whole generation of young people that are living on the streets, living in tents, living by the river, and being harassed by the police and by some of the same folk that were attacking the U.S. Capitol last week. We have low-wage workers in Florida, farm workers, McDonald's workers, who are having to live in their cars or live in trailers with 15, 20 people to a small 1-room trailer. And people have to take shifts when they go to sleep. And again, this is a nation where, the first week that the pandemic hit, the Federal Reserve found $1.5 trillion just to bail out Wall Street. And in this pandemics, what we've seen is actually the richest people of this society make billions, hundreds of billions, close to $1 trillion off of people suffering and dying. And of course, across the country, this is not an anomaly. I mean, this is the other America that actually impacts basically half of this country. And yet, we're finally hearing a little bit about kind of poverty and inequality. People are we're about to have tens of millions of people be evicted. We've never seen that in this nation before. And yet what we know is that it doesn't have to be. And yet we have just this pandemic of poverty, of the lack of health care, folks that have to bury their kids because they don't have health care. How is that? We have the best medical equipment in the world, and yet people are unable to eat, unable to find a safe place to live, and kids are going hungry.
And Reverend, you brought up a great point. The other America, that's obviously one of Dr. King's famous speeches, the two Americas, and it's something that we've constantly lived through. Now, obviously, next Monday we're going to get a ton of statements from lawmakers, espousing Martin Luther King, Democrat, Republican, everybody in between. And I think about Dr. King a lot now, especially with all the torment or just the tragedies that have unfolded over the last year. So what message do you have to these lawmakers who are going to use Dr. King's name, but aren't really answering the call to promote a better America? There's just a lot of viciousness coming. There's just a lot of infighting, a lot of culture war bashing, but there's not a lot of answers or solutions. What do you say to these lawmakers who are going to use his name next Monday?
Well, I mean, I think we need to, as a whole nation, including our elected officials, need to follow the words and the deeds of someone like Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, who talked about the dispossessed of this nation live in a cruelly unjust society. If they can be helped to take action together, they will do so with a freedom and a power that will be a new and unsettling force in our complacent national life. And from here, he kind of calls for the coming together, the organizing of power amongst the people. And he was very clear that it takes movements, and it takes movements of those that are most impacted to push push those legislators, push those elected officials to actually do what actually benefits the whole society. He said the reason that we needed to build power amongst the poor is that power for poor people will really mean, the ability, the aggressiveness, the togetherness, and the capacity to make the power structures of this nation say yes when they really may mean and are tending to say no, right? And that's what we see right now, right? No to expanding healthcare in a public health crisis. No to stimulus, just stimulus payments that could, do a little bit of help. No to pulling together families. No to actually really addressing systemic racism. But the will of the people, and what we saw in this last election and what we're seeing and hearing all across the country, is that people want healthcare. People want living wages. People want a fair taxation system. People want to address systemic racism. And it's the duty of those that have been elected to serve to actually then serve the needs of the people, not the wealthiest, not the corporations that are paying them off.
Dr. Theoharis, I just want to call your attention to a question coming in from the chat, if you wouldn't mind. How does the Poor People's Campaign battle the disinformation channels that paint all social programs as socialist and anti-American?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a number of ways to look at this. Let's go back to our Constitution and our founding documents, right? This country was supposed to be founded on providing life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? Or our government is constituted to establish justice, to promote the general welfare. These kinds of ideas, so welfare is in our Constitution. Why has it become a four-letter word? Why has it become something that's villainized? And so if you look at these kind of moral foundations, also from our sacred traditions, right? I mean, I'm a Christian pastor, and people, in the Poor People's Campaign are from all kinds of faith traditions, but in mine, there's passages like, "Woe to you who oppress the poor and deprive the poor of their rights, who legislate evil and making women and homeless children your prey," right? That's just from the Bible. I'm just quoting some of the faith traditions that some of our elected officials and others, really adhere to, are supposed to adhere to. And so I think what we're seeing is that across all lines of division, people are coming forward saying, we need healthcare and it should be a human right. We need housing and it should be guaranteed. And so, say to a mom who has to choose between keeping her lights on and putting food in her children's mouth, that she's, that she's anti-American. Well, this country was founded, and it's needed to have a lot of reform because it was founded on also some principles of discrimination and racism. Of course, we know this, but the idea that trying to feed your kids and trying to make a better life for you and your community is anti-American is anathema, is just not true. And what we're finding is that people use that kind of critique when they don't want to do the will of the people. It's not that the people are with them. What we saw in Georgia, where candidates came forward with wanting, living wage jobs and healthcare, record numbers of people, including poor and low income people, turned out and voted for folks that talked about the issues that actually impact them. And so that's about as American, or the America we should be living in, that hasn't maybe been what it needs to be for all people, but it has that potential, and may we make it so.
Yeah, and Reverend, now the Poor People's Campaign, you had issued a press release in response to the January 6th, sort of calling out that dichotomy, that double standard that you see where supporters of your group and just the communities that you visit could be arrested for singing hymns and peacefully protesting, and yet these white supremacists seem to just go into the Capitol and disrupt a foundation of democracy with little to no resistance. And I feel that we're talking about MLK. It'd be remiss not to not to talk about how the U.S. government itself sought to quash his message and his movement. And I don't know if we have enough time, but I'd love to play just a short clip. We did an episode sort of about that, where, as you know, the FBI tried blackmailing him. They wiretapped his phones. They, anything they could do to stop the rise of this so-called Black Messiah. So, MC, Manny, are we able to play that real quick? And then
We can if we just have a couple minutes. It won't be very long.
You hoodoo, my guru, tribal, Matulu, tribal, Zulu, Nesferatu, gotta do snooze, and he summoned you for high noon. You getting high and mighty with your haikus. Highs and bites becoming highlighted with who's who. Now they zoomed in on your new tunes. We got your finances, books you reading, publication, education. Social media is subjugated. They got Alexa and Siri calling with information. Once you out of line, they on the line. You online and that's double time. The Patriot Act nullified. Any right you thought you had is vilified. Once you on the list, church out, it's dinner time. You just another docket. Got you boxed in, a pine box or 3 hots in the cot. Either way you locked in. They kill both men John, same way they killed Fred Hampton. Only difference how they planned it. Word up.
COINTELPRO never went away, ever. Certainly after 9/11, everybody should be aware that the national security state went into high gear. This is a country that spies and is not ashamed on its own allies, on the heads of state of Germany, on the head of Brazil, on its friends in high places. Well, what do you think they are doing in terms of spying on the folks that they think are organizing dissent among the most despised people in the United States, Black America? COINTELPRO never went out of business. When this BIE nomenclature came up, it simply reminded us that the COINTELPRO-like programs never die, but they do change nomenclature. They change their bureaucratic identities, but it's always the same. This country has had, in effect, a counterinsurgency program to which many billions of dollars is committed, certainly ever since the late 60s. The mass incarceration regime that was put into effect was the United States answer to the Black liberation movement of the 60s. If you don't stay in your place, we've got a place for you, and that is prison. And that's why almost 1 out of every 8 prisoners in the world is an African American.
Beginning February 1st, which of course is the historic day.
There you go. We have a clip from Black Ops, the COINTELPRO episode, which goes into some of the historical. It's funny, I would think, just as these guys are great journalists. I'm just a guy. It's funny how billions of dollars were spent in that program, but billions of dollars weren't spent keeping people out of the Capitol building. What do I know? Please.
Yeah, Reverend. So to the point of your press release, can you describe that a little bit of what you have witnessed on the ground at when you try to organize, any pushback that your group has received, and what you're hearing from the people?
Well, definitely. When we organized and launched the Poor People's Campaign, we did 40 days of moral and nonviolent civil disobedience, including at the U.S. Capitol. I've been in the same spaces that we've seen so much in the last week over media, and indeed for praying, for singing. We were, surely escorted out and not very peacefully. Folks were arrested and, charged with, all kinds of charges. I was praying on the steps of the Supreme Court with some other faith leaders, and they arrested us and kept us for, a couple of days, and across the country, this is the case, in Kansas, in Kentucky, in Mississippi, and a bunch of the state capitals. We've had Poor People's Campaign leaders trying to bring a message of justice, of we can do better than this, of that these are the issues that are impacting people in this state, and what are our elected officials who are elected to meet our needs and to serve the people going to do about it. And surely we've been met with lots of with violence and with arrest. And I think the other important part of all of this is that I would not characterize what people did at the Capitol last week as a protest or as a movement. It was an attack. It was it was about subverting our democracy, and there were all levels of elected officials who have spent time and resources not passing a just stimulus bill, not making sure that we expand healthcare, not raising wages, not addressing systemic racism, but actually supporting. We're hearing reports, I'm sure y'all are, of people getting tours a couple of days before. We're getting reports of people's security systems being taken out. I've been in a lot of the places that and I know how heavily guarded they are. You can't just get into those spaces. But this is also the history of how law enforcement, how the military, and who law enforcement and who the military chooses to target and arrest and harass versus actually support and use and embolden so as to kind of keep the status quo. So while we haven't seen something like an attack on the U.S. Capitol building maybe in a long time, this kind of mob violence and rule is not new to poor communities. It's not new to Black communities and Native and Indigenous communities. It's not new to women's rights leaders and immigrant rights leaders. And it always follows that when the most possible progressive change is right on the cusp of happening, when people are coming together in new ways and breaking down barriers, that is when this kind of racist violence and mob rule really erupts. And so we shouldn't think that Wednesday was not connected to really a movement, not just folks electing, the first Black woman vice president, not just electing the first Black and Jewish senators of Georgia, but surely that, but the whole coalition, the fusion coalition that both put those folk in the office and who are organizing and demanding rights currently. And this is, and we should see this in the kind of historical perspective, including also the perspective of what the policing of activists is versus the kind of support and emboldening kind of domestic terrorist and white supremacist groups.
And Reverend, just if you have 2 minutes, I just have one last question for you. And, I just thinking it back to Dr. King, he's trying to organize a sort of multiracial working class when he's assassinated. And then that's followed up by, austerity politics, neoliberalism, this mass incarceration state. And that's followed through for multiple decades. So, Senator Bernie Sanders has called for a sort of a revolution. So just how do you sort of just fight back to try to organize and get that message across?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're seeing is that message of uniting poor people, poor Black people, poor white people, poor Latino people, poor Asian people, poor Indigenous folk. I mean, that it's a message that is actually resonating quite well across the country. I mean, we spent a lot of time in Kentucky, and folks there, say that we're uniting people, we're building people, from the hood to the holler, and folks are coming together across these lines that divide. Now, that is a very threatening thing to our status quo, and it is indeed what got Dr. King killed, but having state-based movements in 45 states across the country, having thousands of people that wake up every day thinking, how are we going to build a movement? And most of those people being, like in the words of the Fight for 15 worker, Nick Smith out of Appalachian, Virginia, our backs are against the wall and all we can do is push, right? And this is folk that whose kids are not are not living the life that we all deserve. This is, workers that are not being paid living wages. And so, it's that kind of, a powerful kind of moral revolution of values put together with a power group of people who have nothing to lose, but, winning great transformation for themselves and their families and the nation. And what we know is also that when you organize society around the needs of the poor, that actually redounds to everybody. We have a saying, when you lift from the bottom, everybody rises, right? Trickle down, it don't work. But lifting from the bottom, making sure that something works for a single mom, making sure that the homeless are included, making sure the undocumented immigrants are put first. That means that everybody's in, nobody's out.
Great. Reverend Theoharis, we really appreciate you coming on, and just good luck as you move forward with the campaign. There's obviously a lot of work to do, and thank you so much for coming on the show again.
Thank you.
All right, there it is, the Poor People's Campaign. You can see poorpeoplescampaign.org, where you can find out more about the movement, the messages, the statement on the events of January 6, 2021, and just everything that has to do with that organization and their incredible work. What a delightful treat to have Reverend Dr. Liz Theoharis break it all down.
Yeah, there's just, as we outlined in that episode that SK performed on, it's just, the history of Dr. King has been obscured. It just seems like the longer we go, the more it gets whitewashed and just people forget just sort of the radical side of him. And she just mentioned it, and it's something that was argued in this episode, was that the Poor People's Campaign is what ultimately got him killed.
Right. And we'll talk about that in a sec. Let's break down the MLK, What They Won't Teach You in School episode, the inaugural episode of the Newsbeat podcast. We're going to go into a little bit of that, speak on it a little bit. With that, let's just segue and say thank you to our parent organization, Maury Creative Studios. Jed Maury, who posed a fantastic question to Reverend Dr. Liz Theoharis during her visit, is also the executive director of the Newsbeat podcast, the creator and the grand poobah behind everything. And of course, also Maury Creative Studios, a fantastic digital marketing agency, a Diamond HubSpot Solutions partner, which you'll see on the screen there, which is for large companies, medium to large size companies that are looking to enhance their digital marketing services, their sales enablement, and all the fancy things that make you lots of money, but doing it for good. You can grow for good with the Maury Creative Studios teams. Part of them help us, and we thank all of them. On that note, there's also podcasts, including Grow for Good, a great podcast where Jed Maury interviews other executives and leaders that are doing exactly that. Business leaders who have grown their companies by doing good things. Good company doing good things, helping other companies succeed in a crazy world in crazy times. Shouts to Maury.
We have breaking news related to a topic you touched on at the beginning.
Hold on. I wasn't ready for it. Here we go. Breaking news.
All right. Rick Snyder, former Michigan governor, was charged with 2 misdemeanor counts connected to the water crisis that devastated the city of Flint, says the New York Times.
What? I told you it was going to happen. It was my news bite. I win news bites.
Oh, there's winners and losers in news bites.
There is now.
He wins his
go
news
harder
bite.
Next time.
He wins his news bite, then he says my news bite. So it's like,
Yeah, I won the news bites. So, well, good. Congratulations to whoever decided to do that. We'll see what happens. The convictions, indictments don't always mean.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So that's it. So, all right, we did our thing. Once again, the question of the day. The question of the day. These interns do not know how to act.
She's really tickled by that question too.
Yes, the question of the day. Where is it?
Question of the day.
So, y'all still happy it's 2021? We had some comments so far.
Yay or nay?
Yay or nay? Well, Sage thinks that because Taylor Swift is re-recording her old albums.
Taylor Swift?
Yeah, exactly. Shouts to Michael Doggett, who asked, "We're live on a Wednesday night?" Yes, we are. Absolutely.
I told you guys this was a good idea.
Right, indeed. Samit says, "Let's go." I don't know if that's for us.
Yes.
Michigan, who knows?
Jay, Silent Night. I've heard of this guy. He still has hope for 2021.
All right.
Jed
He's
Morey,
always an optimist.
You can't laugh at Jed Morey's name. That's not how it works. And that's it. And then, as Jed also says, shush, now let's get the Silent Night. Silent Night, my man, my mellow. Thank you for joining us tonight, sir.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here. It's been a great time as usual and informative time, even just listening to the Reverend Doctor speak and all you guys speak. Yeah, it's good to be here. I got my own little Newsbeat bite also, by the way.
Oh,
you have a Newsbeat bite?
Is it a sandwich?
No
do
visual.
Do you want me to give you the whole?
There we go. Thank you, sir. A little afterthought, little bite.
All right.
But it kind of goes with you. It's like a Newsbeat bite, and you said it's supposed to be a small and it's bite. So
Yes.
I don't know how recent this is. I heard about it not too long ago, but that the ice cream Dippin' Dots. Have you heard? You know about Dippin' Dots? They're like theme parks and amusement parks.
It's the ice cream of the future.
yeah.
Ice cream of the future. So it might literally be the ice cream of the future here to save us all, because they're saying the technology they use for the freezers that go like negative 90 something degrees Fahrenheit, I guess, and because of
vaccines,
that, they're able to, they might be able to use that technology from Dippin' Dots for the vaccines for coronavirus.
Is the vaccine going to be in Dippin' Dot form though?
That's a good question. That's a good question.
Do you get some Dippin' Dots after you get the vaccine?
That would be even
that might
better.
change some people's minds about the vaccine, maybe.
Personally, I like my vaccines in bubble tea format, but I'll take a Dippin' Dots. I'm just saying.
It's a start.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for your news bite.
We always need that kind of news. We're way too serious around here. Thank you, SK.
Food or ice cream is welcome.
Silent Night. The reason why you've been invited tonight, even though you've been on other shows, and some you're not invited, you just come. It's weird, but anyway, we're talking about the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We're talking about the episode that launched 1,000 ships, launched 1,000 podcast episodes. MLK, What They Won't Teach You in School, which was originally titled MLK Unfinished Business. And I think that goes into what we were talking about with the Reverend Dr. Theoharis, the Poor People's Campaign, the other part of King's legacy, not just the I Have a Dream, not just the whole thing whittled down into this, ditto sheet that you can give some kids, you color in a picture, and I have a dream, everyone sing Kumbaya, we all get along, and it's all good. Let's all be like Dr. King. That there was way more intricacy and nuance and depth to the things he was trying to accomplish, particularly later in life. And again, shouts to Jed Morey putting the inaugural episode together and giving us this insight, this unconventional look at conventional wisdom. Gentlemen, just real quick, add to this, break down why we did this episode, why it was so important, and what it was speaking about.
Since I was the last one invited on board, I'm gonna let Chris take that.
All right, that's fine. That's right. You weren't even. Yeah, we didn't.
I wasn't even in the meeting.
No, we didn't expect to. We fired everyone else.
What are the dates on those files?
Whoa.
Sorry. Yeah, I think so. Manny, I think you were the first to be brought in. Obviously, as you mentioned, Jed's idea, his baby, to create this incredible. I mean, art, news, music, shining light, correcting the narrative, especially with this episode.
Right.
And I mean, we pretty much spelled out the necessity of it. I mean, his name has been whitewashed. I mean, it's the fact that it's what they won't teach you in school. Because
it was more revolutionary. It was a more it would have changed the game. I mean, he's bringing everybody, as we'll hear from the fantastic clip later, but he's trying to unite all of the working poor of America.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I Have a Dream was one speech that's sort of somehow come to, he lives and dies with that one speech,
Right.
where that is just not the story. That is, and by buying into that, you're disrespecting him. You're disrespecting all those other initiatives, and it's just not true. Prior to this, our live stream tonight, I was re-listening to a speech by him that he delivered in Riverside Church,
Right.
a year to the day before he was murdered. A Time to Break the Silence, it's called. And
Right.
For listeners, for viewers here, I mean, if you ever want to really understand the power and everything he represented, listen to that speech. He starts it off by saying, he knew that. So first of all, the other name of the speech is called Beyond Vietnam, and it's just his evisceration of the Vietnam War and America's part in it. And I mean, he pulls no punches.
This was also brought up in the episode by Larry Ham.
Yeah.
And added to the.
And that's the point. I mean, and Larry in the episodes, he says, MLK wrote 6 books. He's got so many different speeches, and you get the free day off of school, I guess. But how come none of these books and none of these other speeches are required?
Nary one book.
Listening. And I'm sorry?
I said nary one book. I never read a Martin Luther King. Had books, like wrote books when I was a kid in school.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, and why isn't it should be required reading?
100%.
Yeah, and just picking up on something that Chris said, the Vietnam speech was sort of, I guess you could argue, a changing point, sort of in his life and the way that the American public viewed him, because obviously he had his allies during the civil rights movement. But when he started talking about what was happening in Vietnam and sort of the hypocrisy and the connection to America, where people are suffering here and we're sending bombs and guns to Vietnam, black soldiers aligned with white soldiers, but those black soldiers didn't have the same rights as those back home in America. He got eviscerated by a lot of politicians. And I read a stat that over 160 newspapers basically denounced King after that speech. So that sort of changed the calculus for many people in this country in the way that they viewed Dr. King. And then in comes the Poor People's Campaign, which, wait, you're going to unite the working poor?
Right.
I mean, that was a radical idea at the time.
After already coming at us.
Yeah. I don't think people realize just how consequential this period was for him, that last year of his life, and then the assassination, because we don't know what would have happened if he actually united a multiracial working class in this country. And as we covered in the Why We Riot episode, another one in which SK performed with the band, his death touched off hundreds and hundreds of protests and demonstrations and uprisings across this country, which you could then argue help lead to this sort of law and order rhetoric that we've had for so many years. I mean, and this is something that I didn't realize until we started doing Newsbeat. And I think it's just a shame that we don't understand just the real significance. This wasn't just a civil rights leader dying. This was somebody who was trying to change America for the better. And it just hasn't gotten the attention as it deserves that you guys have mentioned.
Well, we gave it some attention because, again, before doing Newsbeat, before being turned on to this unconventional look at conventional wisdom and deciding to do this was previously unaware of to me and maybe to you guys, and certainly to a lot of our listeners who didn't quite get the education. It's what they won't teach you in school. So this was an education to us. SK, the beat in Newsbeat is because what we wanted to do from the very beginning, a la Schoolhouse Rock, a la Hamilton and other things, other aspects, or I would say a la the ABC song, is amplify some of the messaging and the journalism through the use of original hip hop lyrics as a pilot episode, let's try this thing out, this crazy idea. You were brought on and we asked you, because I know you from the New York hip hop scene. I'd covered that as an independent journalist for many years. And I knew you as a great, raucous 50 artist, released a lot of albums. One of the front persons of the band called Fuse, a great band out of New York, New Jersey as well. And we said, hey, here's this thing we're trying to do. What did you think when I said, I need you to kind of rap about this thing sort of as a journalist?
I was excited. I was excited. It was definitely something different, maybe unexpected in a way.
Right.
But yeah, I was definitely excited and interested. And as we've spoken about a couple times, just that that way of writing, that way of writing was very interesting to me because it was something that myself and the band called Fuse had already been exploring, where we'll have meetings and work sessions and I'll take a bunch of notes. So similar to this, I'll get the transcript of the episode, of the interviews, of the news clips, and I'll either, sit there, print it out, or be at a cafe or on my laptop, whatever, read everything, do my own research, and kind of piece it together. And definitely different in a way than just writing a normal song, or at least a solo SK song versus a band called Fuse song.
Right.
And even different from the band, even different from that, even when we try to explain it to people who've never heard of the podcast, they don't really, sometimes it takes them a minute to grasp it, or they got to actually listen to it to realize what it is that I'm actually writing verses around what the journalists are talking about, what the guests are talking about, what the journalists are writing about and talking about. And, instead they're like, oh, when's the new podcast episode? What are you talking about on this one? You're on there, you're talking, are you on every one? And I'm like, I'm not on every one, and I'm not talking. Like, I'm writing verses and recording verses, like as if it were song interspersed, So especially with this one being the inaugural episode, it was still even new to me, but I'm just like, wow, okay, this sounds really dope, and let's make it happen. And I remember reading the transcript, reading some of the stuff, and being like, yeah, this is really dope. And then I don't even know if I had started writing it or not, but I remember once Manny sent me the music with the audio on top of it, with the interview, and then hearing Martin Luther King Jr. speaking, I was like, whoa, like this is where I'm supposed to rhyme. Like when this beat drops, I'm like, it just changed everything too. Like, got goosebumps, which, I mean, to be fair, I could get goosebumps just listening to the man speak in general, but hearing this production, hearing it with the music and with the interview clips and just everything building up.
Yeah.
I remember I was like, oh, okay, this is what this is going to be. This is serious.
We heard a clip earlier. Liquid, our other artist in residence, was performing in the COINTELPRO episode. So people did get a taste of what it's like to merge journalism, with interviews and activists and, again, experts. We've had Dr. Cornel West on the show. We've had Rosa Clemente on the show. We've had Chris Hedges on the show, Barrett Brown on the show. We've had, so Larry Ham. We've had so many people that are like Reverend Dr. Liz Theoharis, the top of the game when it comes to these social justice issues. To have them on record speaking about these issues in a very, compelling way, that's always something. Weaving it with the music, the interspersing of the clips, the media clips, or as in this case, the historical record of Dr. King in his own words, and then with music, and then bringing it in. Man, listen, it's super unique, it's super entertaining, and it's super educational. And the great, the phrase that I think was probably coined by the great Karis One, edutainment in its finest form. Silent Night, could you please, if you would, sir, let people know who are just tuning in and saying, what are you talking about? How do you mix? What is this, like cop rock? Remember that show, Cop Rock?
Let's give them a taste. Let's give them a taste. What was the show? Cop Rock?
Cop Rock. You remember Cop Rock? That was great. It was the show when, like, it was like a regular cop show, but then everyone would break out into like a musical. It was crazy.
I heard about it not too long ago, actually.
There you go. This is this is an excerpt from MLK, What They Won't Teach You in School, the inaugural episode, which launched 1,000 episodes, or like 40, featuring the inimitable Silent Night, Manny Faces on production, and this is how it went. Let him have it.
At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farm. Not only that, today many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. This is what we are faced with, and this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington in this campaign, we're coming to get our check.
A true legacy. The movement, the memory, epitome of truth, the power, they couldn't let him be. Statues now, before was the effigy, the end of Jim Crow, enter the SCLC, non-violent, but nothing close to timid. Master of the boycotts, protests, and sit-ins. A noble man who even won the Peace Prize, yet they threw him in the cell almost 30 times. 3 letters and you know who it is. They try to boil him down with just 4 words, too simplistic. They hunted him down, labeled him a communist. Now they get applauded after they whitewashed it a champion. A man for all people. Uncle Sam ain't wanting to branch out. He reached too far and he pushed too hard. A red alert, so they did what empires do and killed the messenger.
Thank you. Oh, muted, Manny.
Yeah, I muted everyone because I don't want to mess that up.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, the great SK live from the compound. MLK, what they won't teach you in school. That was the verse that inspired us, as Jed Morey said earlier today, or as he said right now. Still gives me chills. You did give our inaugural episode life. You started this all, being able to kind of amplify the message, because there's a whole lot of other stuff in this episode. It's not just Martin Luther King. You wrap it in, it's called a rap. The Reverend Roger C. Williams breaks down exactly how he, as a reverend, as a church leader, is often called to speak on Martin Luther King Day. He's a black Baptist preacher from Long Island, Glen Cove, Strong Island in the house, and has to go and wrestles with this. Like, I have to do the whole, Dr. Martin Luther King, nonviolent protest, turn the other cheek, knowing that there was so much more to his legacy. Larry Ham, a great activist, the chairman of the People's Organization for Progress, based here where I am in Brick City, Newark, New Jersey, also gave his take on, being an activist, knowing about all those other books that Martin Luther King wrote, knowing about the Poor People's Campaign, knowing about how much he was getting into, and how important it would have been, and can still be for America. To have to weigh that against, like I said, the pamphlets and the ditto sheets that they give kids in school and say, no, there's more to it than that. You were able to encapsulate that in a verse that so compellingly put an exclamation point on that. So
thank you, sir.
So yeah, you got the job after that.
Yeah, it's been
4 years later.
Yeah, I know.
Been quite the journey. After that, I got the job now or back then?
No, you're back for 2021. And shouts to you. You're also featured, and again, shouts to Liquid, shouts to Osiris Anthem, Napoleon the Legend, Rabbi Darkside, Rebel Diaz,
Cruise Control,
and Manny Faces,
Anticana
on the Puerto Rico episode. So many great artists, independent artists that really left a mark on our projects. You are also featured on our current episode. What is our, sort of our current episode? It was sort of a wrap-up episode for 2020, the madness of 2020, in conjunction with the mighty organization Color of Change. This was a collaborative event. And the America's Reckoning is a Change Going to Come, which is our current episode. So if anyone's listening, paying attention, stumbling upon us, wondering what this unholy, ungodly mix of, music and journalism is, and you got a taste of it right there, and we have whet your appetite, please do subscribe to Newsbeat wherever you get podcasts, or go to usnewsbeat.com for more information. You will also hear SK on several episodes, including, again, our current one, which is a look back at the summer of revolution, some might say, in 2020.
And also, I know Chris was, you guys were telling me to announce this as well. I'm doing some on my Twitch page. I just started doing Twitch streams, but I'll be doing one coming up about Newsbeat and playing verses, either performing verses live from Newsbeat episodes or playing clips of episodes and stuff like that, and hopefully have you gentlemen on with me. So we can
It's amazing
about that. But yeah,
looking forward to that.
Yeah, thank you.
That is on your Twitch page. I am changing your name because I have the power of internet God right here, and I'm changing your name so that people know how to properly Google thyself. Silent Night, like the chess piece.
I'm just impressed that we could put on a concert in the middle of a live stream. So I hope SK expects to be called basically every Friday or whenever we're doing this.
Y'all want me to? I could DJ. You should actually see what me and SK do on his streams, because we get down with some DJing and some interactions. Members of the band called Fuse have jumped in, so there's a lot you could do.
I love it.
Sure. While you're now, if we're announcing things, I do want to. If y'all want to see my OnlyFans page.
No, I don't.
I got it. No, I got an OnlyFans page.
One of those.
Yeah. I mean, it's after hours. No, it's after hours. You don't want to.
Not bad.
Okay, so thanks.
Don't give them too much for free. Don't give them too much.
No, you're right. That's just a taste. That's just a taste. So we don't.
That really punctuates an MLK episode, live stream.
Oh yeah,
good way to end
bring
it.
the fans in. Got to bring the fans in. Oh my.
Once again, yes, I know. Gonna bring that back around and say, listen, seriously though, all jokes aside, you're right, it is an MLK episode. And we do have some we will be releasing the MLK episode of Newsbeat again, probably, I don't know, tomorrow.
Yeah, or what are you doing in 10 minutes?
Friday.
Yeah, maybe sooner than we're gonna put that back out. We tend to do it every year, and remind people and put it back on the hold on, this is important. We're making sure that we send out your correct Twitch page. It's twitch.tv/silent is busy. Silent Night is busy is the Twitch page. And again, you'll be doing, when is the next one, sir?
The next one, actually, I haven't even announced it yet, but it'll probably be this Sunday. It'll be this Sunday, 17th.
World premiere.
Yeah. And it's a rather breaking news, rather strange schedule, but it'll be the 17th of every month, so a different day of the week each time.
Oh, that's interesting. All right. Well, lucky 17.
There we go. And some loose ones thrown about here and there. So
good. Rumor has it I might be joining you for a couple, so I look forward to that.
Oh yes, definitely.
Right on. All right, so gentlemen, I lost the thing.
And the next Fuse one on January 30th.
January 30th.
January 30th, celebrating Manny Face's birthday. January 30th on the next Band Called Fuse live stream.
Rumor has it. I have an important question. So it's a pandemic and all. Yes. How will you try to get together with Justin Timberlake this year?
Oh, good question.
Because it's gonna be a little hard unless you can organize some sort of Zoom, sort of party. It's gonna happen.
He's been very forgetful the last couple of years. We share a birthday.
I was gonna say, explain to people watching. They have
same birthday.
Share your birthday with.
Well, I also share a birthday with Mrs. Faces, and I also share a birthday with my dad, and I also share a birthday with Mrs. Faces' godfather. And Baby Girl Faces is 1 week before our birthday to the day, so it's a busy time of year. But most importantly, obviously, is Justin Timberlake, and he's been very forgetful the last couple of years. So I tweet him very often around our birthday. I will tweet him and find out what his plans might be, and hopefully this year, as I've done every year, and now probably on some kind of list.
It doesn't matter where he is.
Apparently, there are no lists to stop anybody from doing anything. So I think you're okay.
All right. Well, that's good. Good to know. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I do appreciate that. I appreciate. That's funny. I'm going to put this comment up. Shouts to Eddie Obando. Shouts to Mama Knight on the check-in. Shouts to Jed Morey once again. Thank you, sir. Shouts to Sage Levine helping us out. Checking Samit. Shouts to Michael Doggett if he's still paying attention. We do appreciate y'all. I, for once, am very happy that it's 2021. I know that was our question of the day. I am happy that we can continue to do this work. I look forward to putting out the MLK episode within the next 17 hours or so. Let's wrap this show up with the segments that we have at the end of the paper. What the? Oh, we about to slow jam the news? What's going on over here, bro? Like, you gotta let me know when that's about to drop. I gotta do an outfit change. Okay,
Not on Twitch yet.
Now listen, this is very important. We do have, again, we're all about the little bites of information that you might not know about, and we like to call the first one. It doesn't say it, but I'm gonna say we like to say it's news beating the past. So we're going to go into a couple of quick things that you should know about, and the future. We're going to news beat the future in a minute, and that could be cool because it's going to be some MLK related events that you might want to seriously know about. News beating the past. Who's up?
Yeah, well, I just felt that that photo, that Confederate flag at the Capitol, it just,
we mentioned this earlier. Yes,
haunts me.
Yep.
So I figured I'd use this time. It's a weird factoid. I mean, this twisted, disturbing photo. In the Civil War, apparently, the closest that the Confederacy got to D.C., the Confederate flag got to D.C. was 6 miles. And so, when I heard that, and then I see that photo of that scumbag walking around, it's just, it's.
Yep.
Obviously was adopted, by the whole white supremacist movement.
Right.
Apparently there's significance too with those portraits there. Charles Sumner, I think, was an abolitionist, and the other one was for slavery, and he helped, lead to Jim Crow laws and all this stuff. But there's just something about that image is just so.
Right. I think there's a juxtaposition. I think the two senators flanking the flag, one was an abolitionist and the others supported slavery.
Yeah,
I read that too. So there's just a lot going on there, as you mentioned.
Well, I'll tell you, it is quite a feat that when they try in the middle of the Civil War trying to storm that building, it didn't get within 6 miles, and today they can just kind of walk right in. So a little historical fact, if you hadn't already been aware. And then is that it? That's the thing. Okay, cool. And of course, once again, news beating the future. We can look back and see all these things and be horrified, but there is some, good things on the horizon. And since this is an MLK loosely themed episode, let us news beat the future. Some interesting items of note, events of note in reference to MLK. Rashad?
Yeah, I mean, basically, we'll throw all these links in the comment section wherever you're watching, but mostly on Facebook. So there's plenty of events, obviously, that's going to happen in the next several days, especially on Monday. This one is from the King Center, and it's an observance and what they call a global summit. So it's a multi-day event, and you can see it includes Brian Stevenson, the Equal Justice Initiative. So we're going to share the links. Just check those out. I think the one, I guess, I hate saying this, like the positive or whatever of everybody being home and on the computer is that a lot of these events are going to be virtual. So you actually could attend just by logging on.
Right.
Yeah.
So
and free. So you can attend by logging on to your computer, your device, and check those out. Some are going to be, pseudo concerts to celebrate him. There's obviously this one from the African-American Museum in Washington, D.C., which has been closed, I think, since November. So, but they're putting on this live event also. So just check out those links and maybe take some time out of the day to reflect on Dr. King's life and some of the things that we talked about, his legacy, and just how important he was to this nation.
I'm pasting this. Chris, you're just sending this across the desk. Newswire. There's a link here, which we're going to also add.
Yeah, that one each year I sort of go and check that one out. That's sort of the quote unquote official, MLK Day one. It calls for a day of service, which I guess Shed said with the pandemic. I mean, who knows what?
Wasn't that something instituted by President Obama?
I'm not too sure on that, but what I do
If it
like,
was, it'll be reversed in the next 7 days. Don't worry, it'll be taken back.
what I do like about this, what I do like about this site is that you can type in your zip code and stuff, and there's a portal, and it'll bring up all different.
Oh, local, very nice.
Yeah, so
we'll be sure to include that. Also, once again, respect and love to Reverend Dr. Liz Theoharis, who joined us earlier. This is the Poor People's Campaign MLK related event as well. And you can see
I think that one will also include Reverend William Barber, who obviously a lot of people who follow social justice news are probably familiar with. And I think that one's on January 28th. So I think we have some time.
It is Thursday, January 28th. It's the King 2021 lecture and conversation. Where do we go from here? And that's what I like about, obviously, the Poor People's Campaign is they're not historians. They are, but they're not, we're not looking back just to reiterate what happened in the past, but this is an organization that is alive and active and moving forward. And as we always try to do, we try to say, we're not just telling the stories and lamenting what's going on, but we want to kind of put you on to people who are doing the work to make the changes, to fix the situation, to find the solutions, to make the impact. The Poor People's Campaign is a very active, a live organization, and their events, their Facebook, their social media, very worth checking out if any of the topics we touched upon tonight move you.
And just one final note for me, that each of these episodes are incredible teaching components, and especially now with the pandemic, there's so many kids at home. Testament this MLK episode particularly has been used in classrooms, and we've heard great things. So
that is absolutely true. We have a great testimonial from a teacher. It was on the, where did we put it?
I think it was the last, I think it was the 2020 edition that we included that.
So you'll hear it in the episode because I think we brought it back at the end when we found out that the episodes not only are, showing this, again, unconventional look at conventional wisdom, as we like to say, but also that there are some progressive minded teachers that have the freedom and the leeway to introduce curriculum, introduce items into curriculum that aren't part of and they're reaching out and they're finding things on their own. And Newsbeat has been brought into classrooms to great success. So we do thank you for that. We expect and hope that teachers and other educational professionals who want to learn a little bit more about what we do and incorporate some of the stuff can reach out. We could talk to you. We could point you in the right direction. There are a lot of things that we've covered actively, active things that are going on as well as historical. So, we're good for that too. Okay. Wow. I guess that's it.
Yeah, I think it was worthwhile. I guess just leave people with it's something that I mentioned because there's always irks me when we were talking to Reverend Theoharis. It's just these disingenuous comments that you're going to hear, over the next couple of days from politicians, many of them who would never support. If MLK was alive today, they would not support many of the things that he's talking about. A self-proclaimed democratic socialist
all year
in this country. So
long,
just have a critical eye whenever you see these comments come across.
SK, you were gonna say?
I was just saying all year long they bring up stuff like that. People are like, "Oh, MLK wouldn't agree with these protests or whatever." But especially this week, next when the day comes along, I guess it's even more so than usual. So
they even use his first Super Bowl commercials. So
nice, yeah.
Yep. Nothing says Super Bowl.
MLK like capitalism.
He put the K in capital. Wait a minute. So do check us out. Again, we are a podcast, a ragtag bunch of YouTubers at this point, or Facebookers and Twitchers, but we are really excellent at putting together podcasts. So do find Newsbeat wherever you subscribe to podcasts. If you don't listen to podcasts, if you are just like a Facebook person and you're like, I don't really do podcasts. I don't really, just do me a favor. Go to usnewsbeat.com. You can play the episodes through the browser. You don't have to do a podcast. You don't have to go to Apple Pod. If you're not a podcast person, come to the website. You're a website person. usnewsbeat.com. Play the episode right there. And you'll see, kind of why we want you to do that. And hopefully then you'll at least subscribe to us. If you are a podcast person, do subscribe. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, Stitcher, Joe's Podcast Shack, wherever you get podcasts, we're there. Rate us, review us. Please take a drink because Chris shook his head. And do follow us, share, spread the word. You can donate to us. We have a thing on our website. The best thing you could do is let somebody know that you found this amazing podcast. Shouts to the Bellow Collective, one of the 100 outstanding podcasts of the year 2020. Shouts to the Society of Professional Journalists, the Press Club of Long Island. We've won awards, and that's all great, but we just want you guys to pay attention and listen to the wonderful stylings of artists like Silent Night and the wonderful work being done by people like the Reverend Dr. Liz Theoharis, Poor People's Campaign, our guests for tonight, this week in social justice, although it's just like this night in social justice. I do expect that we'll be coming back on a regular basis because you love us so, and we'll let you know about that. Please follow us on Facebook, Newsbeat Podcast, on Twitter at US Newsbeat, and wherever else we might be. My name is Manny Faces. You can Google me and say, why does this guy have such a weird name? And you'll get it. And, on behalf of Christopher Tawarski, Rashed Mian, Jed Maury, the entire Maury Creative Studios team, Sage, Jeff, John Chim, Sasala, everybody who works there and helps us out with the things we need. And once again, Silent Night, who is still with us, the band called Fuse, and everyone there, my musical family. We thank you for listening, tuning in, and turning up with us. We'll be back very soon. Any parting words, gentlemen?
Be safe and healthy. It's a rough time out there.
Indeed. As always. All right, y'all. Peace and love. Thanks for watching. We'll be back soon. Yes, end the broadcast. It's a click end broadcast, and it says end the broadcast. Yes, end the broadcast.